Hello, Aboutiers from around the world. My name is Kais, and I am 11 years old, and I live in Montreal, Canada. Welcome to our Aboot Zoom session with me and my co-host Mayillah, who is 9 years old and currently lives in Maryland in the United States. We'll be interviewing our guest changemaker, Michael Stott, who is based in Brisbane, Australia. Michael is the director of city strategy and place at urban planning firm Urbis. He is an urban designer, a placemaker, and a strategic planner who creates livable places for people. Michael's work contributes to several sustainable development goals, particularly to SDG number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Mayillah and I will be asking questions to Michael about his background, his journey, his work, his skills, and his impact. We hope that you will enjoy this session, and I will now be handing you over to Mayillah to ask the first question.
Michael, it's so nice seeing you. So my first question, I would like to ask, how did you find out, this is what you want to do for the rest of your life?
Well, it's a long journey, much like your mum, Kais. I went to university in Montreal, and that was the start of my journey, really. And over the years, working internationally, whether it was in the UK, in the Middle East, or China, or further flung places, what I started to realize was that it wasn't just urban design and strategic planning and environmental issues that interested me, it was people issues. And I think that from that, placemaking, which is something that I subscribe to as a practice more so now than I did early in my career, really became a way of framing my thinking about how I design things. And so, it was a journey of learning a lot about my profession and the different aspects of it, but then really figuring out probably more in my late 30s that I wanted to contribute a little bit differently, and that was more from the ground up or in people-based planning and placemaking. So I started, really working on these large-scale master plans that I felt the people element was missing, and so I used place-based development or placemaking as a kind of way to reconnect people to the larger projects that I work on.
Wow, thank you so much for that fabulous answer. Yeah, it was a little bit confusing. Anyways, for my next question, if you were to live somewhere that you designed and built, what would you be proud of?
Well, when you design, so let's say, I'll build off you saying it's confusing what I do for a living. If you think about where we all live and the things in your community that make you happy, and the things that we do socially to make us happy and things like this, when we develop things or when we design these big communities, oftentimes you can go into a new community and you don't really feel at home. My job is to really create communities and developments where people feel connected to each other and feel more at home. So more like a neighborhood feel or a closeness between people. So when we talk about building things, design, development, what we need to try to do is not design them as museums, but more design them as people places. And so if you've been with your parents to, whether it's in Montreal, Jean Talon Market, or a market where you live, and you really feel that closeness of people and the activity and the buzz, that's what we're going for in our designs. And so when I design things, and the things I'm the most proud of is when there's outcomes that lively, full of activity, full of life, full of things to do, and really places that create opportunities for everyone, regardless of your ability or where you're from. So really community-focused, feel-good places.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I have another question for you. Why do you think what you do is important?
Well, it's a good question, Malaya, and I think
Myla?
that Mila, I think that's what's important is that we don't disconnect ourselves from the need for people to be close to each other. So I'm sure both of you have had periods of lockdown during COVID-19, for example, where you were restricted in terms of where you could go and who you could associate with. A lot of your classes would have been online and things like this. And so that's not as much fun as your normal life. And so when we design things, we try to design things so that these kind of relationships, kind of interactions can happen more freely. And I think what's important is that human beings are kind of social animals naturally. So we shouldn't design things to exclude that interaction. We should design things to include that interaction. And I think that's really important to how we build things.
Wow, that was a long answer, but I get you, and I really agree with that. And what, I'm not sure I get this right, but what's really the difference between engineering and what you do?
So they often say that a designer is only as good as their engineer. And I think what they mean by that is that as designers, we can have really big creative ideas, but you need to be able to actually build them. And so let's say I draw a bridge in the shape of a kind of triangle or a spiral. I'm not the one that's going to actually make sure that that bridge stands there and stays forever. The engineer would come in and structurally account for how that bridge would work. It's the same with buildings. It's the same with houses and whatnot. So as compared to what I do, which is a lot of ideas and putting things on paper in terms of how they're designed and how they look, the engineers come along and tell me actually how they're going to work in practice rather than just in my head as an idea.
Thank you. Now I'd like to pass it to Heis, who is also going to ask a few questions to you.
All right. So my first question is, how did COVID affect your work?
So here in Australia, we went quite quickly into lockdown, and we started working from home. I've been lucky enough to write quite a bit about this recently. And people, it's quite a hot topic, as you can imagine. And so, just in terms of my office, we all, the first thing that happened is we went into an A team and a B team so that we had teams that were physically separated so that we could work at different times without cross contaminating if somebody had COVID. It started to make it challenging because I work in a very collaborative industry. So we tend to work a lot closely together. And around big pieces of tracing paper and share lots of good ideas that way. But then as COVID got worse, we had to work from home. And I think working from home was challenging for a lot of us, although Zoom, Teams, all the video media that we're able to use was helpful. It also didn't have that interaction that we're used to in terms of being closer together in a kind of more closer working environment where we can share ideas. And I've used Miro boards, I've used all sorts of technology to help get over that, but sometimes it's just not the same as being next to somebody and working. What's interesting though is that myself and my colleagues around the world, we've been able to be a lot more connected than we were before COVID through video media, and which made it interesting for sharing good ideas. So let's say here in Australia, I'm something interesting for work that's helping us get through COVID, and then somebody shares with me something in the Netherlands or in somewhere else in Europe or even America. We're able to rapidly share those ideas through Zoom and different things, which has been incredible. So the amount of collaboration has been great. But the way that we work, I think, still needs to be together sometimes. And so for us really here, we're all back in the office now working, and I think we've been more productive, although we've been more flexible in terms of, more people are still working from home occasionally, but then we all come together a couple times a week in the office. So I think we worked through it quite quickly and quite well, but sometimes being together is also really great.
All right. What made you want to make Urbis, like the company?
So Urbis as a company is been around for a long time, and when I joined Urbis as a company, it was because they're really at the forefront. They're really at the kind of in Australia. They're very well known for their design, for their urban planning, for their economics team, for some of these credentials, and I really thought there was an opportunity to add some value to the projects that they were already doing, master planning and whatnot, from this place point of view that I was explaining earlier. And so really where I'm a bit different in my work at Urbis is I add things to their project, I think a different way of looking that perhaps they weren't looking at. So I try to make myself a little bit unique in what I do, and contribute differently to them. As a company, Urbis as well, we call ourselves city shapers, and that's really because we believe that city shaping is important from lots of different aspects. So how we relate to each other in cities, how we design and build cities, and how we run cities from a government point of view. It's all connected to what we do as a company. It's an exciting company to work for, and there's really smart people that work there, and I love going to work every day, so it's quite fun.
What was your favorite urban area that you created? Or
Well, the favorite thing that I've worked on that has become a project is actually one of the projects we've just finished here in Brisbane, and it's a place called South Bank. And it's a master plan for it, but what's unique about it is a master plan for an area that already exists. So it wasn't a matter of coming in and creating something brand new from where there wasn't development or things to do already. And so the unique kind of challenge of it was how do you take something that already exists and is really well known and really well loved and make it relevant and really well loved by the next generation. So it's more than just kind of designing things for that space. It's making it mean something for a whole new generation of visitors and users, and for people that live in Australia and people that visit Australia from international countries. So that's been my most favorite one in the last couple of years. Of course, I've also had some great projects in Canada, in the UK, and in the Middle East in particular. But sometimes, Kais, what's interesting is that the most favorite things are the smallest things. So your mom will appreciate this. One of my friends from the Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council sent me a photo 2 days ago of a very small plaza that was built in front of our old office, Al Morabi, and it's benches and a shade structure, and it's something small that we worked on for National Day 7 years ago. But to see a picture of it finally built, this small little space with such a big impact, it was so great. I love things like that too, because sometimes a lot of small things are better than one giant thing. And so it's nice to have a kind of a scale of projects that I get to work on that are both big and small, but all having some kind of impact.
Okay, well, I don't really have any more questions. So, actually, wait, I have one more. Do you have any advice for somebody who wants to be a better shaper of future in cities, like public spaces, creating public spaces?
Yes, I think kind of always questioning and trying to understand things is important. And, you know, if you're interested in shaping a public space, city shaping, this kind of thing, I reckon the best thing you can do is to really, whenever you're in a space that you like, Kais, think about why you like it and what you're doing at the time. Think about what makes it special to you at that moment, and then think about how you could maybe take those what you've learned about that space that you're in and apply it to somewhere else. So I think that constant learning and constant understanding of how people interact and relate to each other in public space, this is the starting point. And things like you're doing now with this Zoom, it's all important for helping you understand how to design things for us to live better together.
Okay, well, Maya has one more question. Pretty sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so this isn't a very on the topic question, but this is a question about your life. I have two questions actually. Do you
Sure.
have any kids? And if you do, how many?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have 3 boys and 1 little girl. I've got a Nelly, an Oscar, a Luca, and a Benji.
Thank you. And what were good times for you in work, and what were like good times and what were bad times like?
Well, the good times are when like there's this thing where you're doing the right job when you get out of bed every day excited to go to work. And I've been quite lucky to have quite a few jobs like that, including where I'm at now. And I think the bad times at work are more, what's frustrating as a grown-up is sometimes when you feel like not making the impact that you thought you would. And I think that's hard because you really, as designers especially, we put a lot of our personal self into what we do. Designs come from us as a person in our interactions and things like this. So when you're doing that over and over and you feel like you're not making an impact, that's when you start to think maybe it's time to change where I'm working and things like that. And so I think every job you're going to have your entire life is going to have good times and it's going to have bad times. But as long as you're still getting out of bed in the morning, excited to do what you do, whatever it is you guys choose to do, that's when you know you're in the right career. Sometimes, too, you have to remember that the employer is secondary to the excitement of getting out of bed and enjoying what you do. So you can change the employer, but it's important to love what you do. And I really do love what I do.
Thank you. That's
All right. All right. So thank you, Michael and Mayillah, for the great discussion and for everything that we learned today. Thank you, Obooters, for listening to this interview. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can hear about upcoming sessions with other changemakers. Please also tell your friends about Oboot and share our social media links with them. And last but not least, go to www.oboot.co to learn about opportunities to collect digital badges and help us draw down carbon.